Thanks for tuning in to Written on the Edge, Season 8, Episode 5. I'm really glad you're here. I'm Van Sebastian, here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins. In this
Howdy.
week's episode, we'll be discussing Melanie Mitzner's many works, including her most recent, Slow Reveal. We're then going to do a surprise review to kick off Lesbian Film Month this month. And then we'll be sharing what won our week, so stick around. But now, on to the interview. Slow Reveal was published by New York University's Inanna Publications in May 2022. It's a Best of Women's Fiction debut 2022 and a fiction bestseller at Berkeley distributor SPD Books. An excerpt of Melanie's novel Too Good to Be True was published in the Harrington Lesbian Quarterly. Her screenplay Zero Gravity was awarded an Edward Albee Fellowship. A finalist in the Writers Guild East Foundation Fellowship for her screenplay Dodge and Burn, her screenplays In the Name of Love and Out to Lunch were finalists in the Houston Film Festival screenwriting competition. She received a fellowship from M.E.T Theater and was awarded fiction grants from Vermont Studio Center and summer literary seminars. As a journalist, she covered the tech industry, television production, and visual effects. Her recent work appears in Wine Spectator, Gay and Lesbian Review Vol1Brooklyn, Bloom, and San Francisco Bay Times. Her interviews and excerpts are on Open Book, Rainbow Country Radio Show, syndicated, and podcast across Canada, Glad Day Bookshop TV, and Hasty Booklist. Melanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for bringing that pedigree. Oh my God.
Yeah, right?
I mean, you
Do I need to bow or curtsy?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I just want to know protocol.
No.
But you've written in like some of our personal favorite fields. I mean, I'm an actor, Baz is an actor. We both love books. You've touched all of it. Where did your passion to start writing come from?
Well, actually at a very young age, I would, spend my Saturdays at the library and pile the books on. So, that started then. But in college, I studied existentialists and French drama.
Wow.
Really, got a real good job after that. Anyway, so, I studied that, and then I made my way eventually to New York, where the real action happened. I met Mead Roberts, who was teaching screenwriting at the New School, and he adapted Tennessee Williams plays for the screen, like Summer and Smoke and The Fugitive Kind.
Nice.
He's brilliant. He was really brilliant, and he really focused on characterization, which was my love, mostly. So, I worked hard on that, and then he invited me into a writing group, and it had fabulous writers in it. They were, theater critics and journalists and screenwriters and all kinds of people. So I learned a lot in that, and after that, I said, okay, I'm going to get serious about this. And I did land an agent for a while, and the agent set up some meetings for me in California. And I got really close to one option for one screenplay that I had called Out to Lunch, which was a Black comedy. And it was about a wife who's a veterinarian, and she dies of bad hotel chicken at a veterinarian convention. And the husband's a chef, and he has a food phobic child that he has to raise. So,
Oh no.
So Martin Short was really interested in it, his production company, and he was contracted with Disney. So Disney says to me, "Well, we really love this screenplay, but we don't want you to kill off the wife." And I said, "Are you serious?"
Kind of the crux.
I can't do this other way. I don't see how to do it. So, I thought long and hard about it. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, where is she? What would happen? She wouldn't be involved with the child. So, I let that go. And then I was sweating bullets, pitching other screenplays. And I said, maybe this isn't for me. I'm just not cut out for that. I like, writing is solitary. I like that. So I turned to fiction, and I studied, took a few online courses through the University of Iowa. And then here I am.
Nice. So, Slow Reveal came out this year.
Right.
What should people know about it?
Here it is.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Slow Reveal. It's a story about chosen and nuclear family of artists set in New York in the 90s, and they defy the arbiters of culture and challenge social norms of the time. The thing that I really wanted to explore in this novel was the relationship of the artistic process to building intimacy and trust and love, because I feel like it really requires the same attributes. And you have to expose your vulnerability, your insecurities, your limitations. You got to deal with rejection, generational trauma and family dynamics that always impacts your work. And you have to have the courage and authenticity to pursue it. So, I said, it's really interesting how both of those, aspects, artistic process and building intimacy and love are so similar. So the way that I did it was the protagonist, Catherine, is a film editor, and she's married to Jonathan, who's an artist and a recovering addict. And his art he's very political, and a critic slams his work for politicizing art. So he abandons his art career for advertising. And in the process of that all going down, he commits an infidelity, and they end up in an open marriage because of that. They have two grown daughters. One's an installation artist, and another one's an aspiring writer mired in addiction. So Catherine, in this open marriage, goes to a reading, and she meets Naomi, a lesbian poet, and they have a very passionate 10-year on-off extramarital relationship. At which time Catherine's really struggling to maintain both. And because her daughters are derailing and her husband's a mess, she says to herself, well, this is very typical in the gay world. I really need to try to reconcile my marriage, and deal with them. So she tells Naomi, I have to cut this relationship off. But an unexpected tragedy strikes, and their lives are completely upended. And of course, things don't work out as planned. But that's
Right.
the basic.
That's life.
That's life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before I dive into that amazingly complex family dynamic, I just want to ask, was the 90s a specific choice, or was it just where the story felt comfortable?
It's somewhat of a nostalgic choice for me, because I was in New York from 79 to like the middle of the 90s. And the 80s were great. I mean, they were fabulous. But for this particular story, to kind of, narrow it down, I really, and since I left like in the early to mid 90s, I wanted to set it there at that time. But it's also because New York is a character in this novel, and New York went through a radical change. It's never going to be the same. I mean, of course, we always say that when we leave it, but it really, the Wall Street took over the East Village, and Kmart moved in, and, everything changed in New York. And so I wanted to set it at a very turbulent time, that changed. So that's why I did that.
Makes perfect sense because of the turbulence in your characters' lives.
Yes.
So I have a question. What are your thoughts on doing historical queer fiction, and the kids nowadays, the children out there, who tend to have all these triggers and everything, and yet as writers, we know what the story is innately. We know where we have to go with it. And especially in a historical context, you may tread lines that maybe aren't necessarily approved now, but they were appropriate for the time that you're writing. What are your thoughts on creating something in the 90s that may not be as forward thinking as kids today think we should be?
Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting point, because, identity politics were not the issue, and they are now.
Absolutely.
And it's a little stultifying. I struggle with that now, because I feel like, queer was queer, that the universe was ours. We didn't have to identify it. And in some ways, it's almost like we profile ourselves more now than we did then, So it's a little strange like that. And I'm sure, I did actually encounter a 20-something-year-old that did a review on my book, and he said, and actually I've written 2 screenplays about AIDS, and, I'm very political in my work. So he starts going on about, I could have taken advantage of that. And that's not what this novel was about. And I did actually talk about it in the novel. But, he just latched on to racism and, and AIDS, and, and all these different sort of flashpoints. Like, these should have been what I really elaborated on, and that I didn't take advantage of it. to me, actually, AIDS was raging in the 80s. I mean, it still went on in the 90s, but it was, I lost a lot of people then. Anyway, so you're right. And it's funny that you say historical fiction, because when I wrote that, I didn't think about it being historical, because,
Right. It was what we lived through. Right. Exactly.
Right.
And, Autostraddle, which is, a lesbian organization, they classified it as historical. And I said, it's not historical. But anyway, it's like, what are you going to do?
Right. Right.
I don't know.
Well, so when you were not dealing with, but communicating with that 20-year-old reviewer, why didn't you just point out that this was very much about found family, discovered family, the family we have versus the family we want? I mean, that's a current hot button
It
topic
came out
too.
before I had a chance to.
Oh, okay.
It came out without my input. Let's just put it that way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So Catherine finds resolution by the end? I just have to ask.
Yes. I mean, and it's interesting, the character that actually helps them through this process. He's actually Jonathan's father. So it's really, people just love that character. They just, I mean, because he also helps Catherine's daughter, who's struggling with addiction. So, yeah, I mean, yes, there's, you're not totally depressed when you finish reading it, I promise. Not at all, actually. No, you're very uplifted in the end, but it's not an obvious ending, and there's no guarantees, of course.
Well, of course, it's life.
That's right.
All right. You had asked me if you could read an excerpt from it, and now, with having had this conversation, I'm dying to hear it. So I'm going to jump in and ask for it now.
Okay. I don't cover the artistic aspect as much. I do touch on it, but I had to find a spot here because I know it has to be short. This is Naomi comes to Catherine's loft after they've been separated about 4 months, after she broke it off, and you'll find out why. When Catherine opened the door, Naomi walked into her other life, into the loft with the name Kane written all over it. The space encompassed all the telling details of family life: dirty champagne glasses, a crumpled up robe, even a well-used ashtray. Things that made a home look occupied. She saw the family photographs lining the mantel. Was it deliberate, this leaving of things, clues to her other life? Catherine on Jonathan's lap, the girls on either side, the quintessential family portrait. Naomi couldn't sit for fear she'd be staring at that photograph. Never did she imagine being out of the picture completely. She couldn't conceive of the end. Theirs was not a transactional love, but one filled with passion and ardor. Like art, a creative process, the failures a means to success, the process an end unto itself, something that over time would be realized, even though from the start it felt like it was complete. Awkward, this unexpected reunion, but Catherine moved about without the drag that immobilized her earlier. The minute Naomi arrived, everything seemed lighter, despite the challenge of a relationship, discarded in the name of family, now in name only. Naomi placed her hand around the curve of Catherine's face. I can't imagine what you're going through. It must cloud everything. As painful as it is for me, I have to face reality, and the reality is right there in that picture, Katie. You haven't called me Katie in a very long time. She felt the twitch and pulse of her body responding not to need, but to an expansive, not contractive love. She didn't have to read the signals, tell herself it was time to react. No preconceptions, no intentions, no missions to accomplish. Only an effect that lingered long after the gesture was over. Like Sappho's ode to Aphrodite, even in the face of mortality, she could not deceive the gods. In Naomi's arms, she safely lost her will, without concern about where it went or if it would return. She stepped to the edge of the world, which flattened, stepped over the edge and looked down. But this time she didn't fall, defying the forces of gravity. She knew Jonathan's death had no bearing on the outcome of their relationship, but she couldn't help thinking, now that they were free to love openly, without obstacle, she should declare her intentions, declare them unconditionally, and be grateful for the gift bestowed upon them. Serendipitously, but horribly tragic. Instead, she felt the fatalism more acutely, what wasn't possible with Jonathan. To Catherine, separation came from the need to let down her guard, to move through the day unnoticed and unannounced, to live on the inside, not out, even to hide sometimes. Maybe it had nothing to do with love. I'm booking a memorial service at Astor Gallery, a retrospective of Jonathan's work. Naomi drifted off, deaf to her declaration of duty. She knew all too well about her husband's disillusionment with the art world. Still, she saw it as a validation of sorts, one which Jonathan should have earned while he was still alive to benefit from it. She'd been thinking about that a lot lately. In a sense, she felt a kindred spirit, a soulful longing, a consummation that artists expect when they release their work into the world. But instead of gratification came disaffection, not so much from the criticism and discernment, but from the mortality of the work. They walked to the door. Naomi embraced her, flashing to the last time they made love, of being inside her, taking her to that place only they could go. Catherine lingered in her arms, which always held her with a certain authority. As Naomi slipped on her jacket to leave, one thing was clear. Nothing was definite. Nothing was inevitable. Nothing except Jonathan's demise. That's it.
Wow.
I like that. That was good. That was excellent.
Thank you.
If that doesn't entice you to pick it up, I don't know what will.
Thank you.
Well, no, but with just that excerpt, that 2 minutes of read, I completely see what you're talking about when you talk about relationships and art being similar, and the way intimacy is built, the way you have to look inside as well as expand outside. I mean, you had all of that wrapped up into that one read. Beautiful.
Thank you.
And I think the title also kind of lends, at least my impression just from the reading, is that, that's how life is. It's a slow reveal of things that happen as signposts in your life, of how things come to you and how things open up and or close off to you depending upon the situation.
Yeah,
so I kind of like,
yeah, your willingness to accept it. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Love that. Excellent. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Is there anything else you want folks to know about the novel?
Well, one thing that I do in this novel, which, might run counter to the way a lot of people think, is there's times when devotion and commitment aren't the guardrails that keep a work or a relationship on track, but they can be a form of entrapment. So that's explored too. And if people are into characterization, I really dive deep into the psyche of these characters. So, and since New York is a character too, I think that, that would appeal to.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent.
Well, also, thank you for bravely exploring the reality of open marriages, because they're way more common than media would let us believe.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially now, it's like, there's so many, but the thing is, you don't really know what's going to happen,
right.
Because in the novel, the deal was between Jonathan and Catherine, emotional infidelity was off the table, but you really can't say that.
That's impossible to control.
Right.
All right. So, what are you working on next, and is it something you can share?
Sure. I just finished a novel called The Expat, which on Inauguration Day 2017, a Gen Z photographer boards a bus for Canada. And in Montreal, she befriends a gay music producer in his 70s. So they have this really dynamic, fabulous friendship that defies all the conventions of ageism. And they're both activists, so they're empowered by their relationship because it's a charged political climate, where the future of everyone is at stake. Americans, Canadians, liberal democracies around the world, because, they're witnessing the unraveling of America. So it's really from the point of view, it goes back and forth between those two characters, because I feel, relationships are only saving grace in that environment, and we're not done yet. So that's that novel, but I did start a new one if you want to hear a little bit about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
This one is about loss. And again, there's an artist, a sculptor, who does large-scale works from found objects and recycled materials. And her partner is a journalist. The sculptor has a degenerative illness, and she wants to take control. And, as we age, we need the privilege of an exit plan with dignity. We ways of dealing with our pets, that's painless and not protracted. And, and we have rituals around everything in life except death. I'm not talking about funerals, but the dying process. Mm-hmm. So it's not, the thing about this is I feel like, once you start to hit 50 and you're over 50, we have a very youthful society. So at best, you're invisible, and at worst, you're disgusting. So we need to have an exit plan. Anyway.
Right. And it comes sooner than you think.
Yeah, I mean, I take it very seriously. I don't take it lightly. I'm not saying everybody's got to figure out an exit plan, but we really don't really give people options. And also with dementia, a lot of other situations.
Oh, yeah.
I experienced that with my partner's mother. And, after you go through that, you think things through. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of that is the survivor. How to lose a loved one you've been with for decades, or, you lose a part of yourself. You never really feel whole again. Mm-hmm. So how to figure out life after that. And so that's what this one, and I'm only halfway through a first draft, so who knows what it's going to be, but we'll see.
Well, what social site or website is best for people to follow updates as you progress on this project?
I think, my website, MelanieMitzner.com, I always post a lot of links on there. It has all of my interviews, my events, everything's on there. So instead of going, to Instagram or going to Facebook, which you can do, it's author Melanie Mitzner on Facebook, and Instagram, Melanie Mitzner. But I really don't post so much about the work itself, except occasionally when an event comes up. So my website's probably the best option.
Perfect. Any final words of wisdom?
Well, I think passion and authenticity are the currency that writers should use. And the only advice I'd give is always show up and never give up, because it takes a while. Let me tell you.
Always show up and never give up. I love that.
Love that.
All right, folks, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Melanie Mitzner for being with us. Melanie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So please like, subscribe, push all the buttons. But now, on to our review. All right, we are back with our review of Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I was kind of looking forward to seeing this movie. Baz, why don't you tell folks what it's about?
Okay, it's about a middle-aged Chinese immigrant is swept into an insane adventure in which she alone can save existence by exploring other universes and connecting with the lives she could have led.
And this month, joining us for these reviews is Liz Faraim, author and friend of the show. Liz, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So glad to be back.
It's our lesbian love month.
Is that what we're calling it?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Well, this first one was not about lesbian love, though a character played by an actress who I adore is in it, and she has a girlfriend, so it counts.
And there's also some with the mother, too. There were
a little bit.
Yeah.
In one of the realities.
One of the realities, yeah. So.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to fanboy it, so you might as well just, you guys get your criticals in, and then I'm going to try and blow the dust away.
I felt it was a modern retelling with a twist of the traditional heroine's journey, wherein the woman finds that reality doesn't suit her, like Alice in Wonderland thought that her sister's Victorian England didn't suit her, or Dorothy thought that boring old gray Nebraska didn't suit her. So she trips and falls into a fantasy world where she has an incredible adventure, only to discover she had everything inside her that she needed after all. Magical tips and tricks get her to the world and out. Alice was, through a rabbit hole and drink a magic potion, and Dorothy was, hey, I'm going to ride my house through a tornado. Well, in this one, they took the tips and tricks to a crazy place, and each reality that our heroine had to visit required a different trick. Some of them shocking on purpose, I think. But getting out also requires it, and then they come home to find that they've had everything they needed. This movie, I thought, had a neat twist in that there was some generational angst. The daughter, who was our lesbian of the show, had a similar feeling with reality And so not only did each of the women have to find out what they needed to come back home, but they had to find each other. So it was a nice twist. But I still felt it was a very traditional hero's journey. Somebody else jump in.
Go ahead, Liz.
Oh, where to even start?
Well, first, let's just say that it's wonderful that we have a movie where the leads are of an ethnic community.
Yes.
And so it's nice that we're getting a rich tapestry and luckily the top 3 characters in the movie, the 3 main leads, all got nominated for Oscars this year out of the 11 Oscars that the movie garnered. So bravo on that level, just from the new way of storytelling that I am here for. So go ahead, Liz.
I will say that the movie to me was chaotic. It took me some time to catch up to what was happening. It just sort of throws you in, right? The opening scene is just chaos. Very disorganized lives.
Deep end of the pool.
Yes, which I understand is, the way the film flows and is sort of off the wall and sort of absurd in some places is pretty telltale of that it's, directed by the Daniels. And so this is kind of their style, which isn't always to my taste. But kind of chaos was the main word that was sort of in my head the entire time I was watching it. I do agree with Vance on the core theme of it, kind of the story they were trying to tell. I think that if you're going to watch this film, you really need to suspend reality when you sit down to watch it and just leave everything behind, because it's off the wall, absurd in some points. I did laugh out loud several times. There were some very funny parts to it when I wasn't going, what the hell's going on? I was laughing. So it was just kind of all over the place. And I enjoyed it, and I also didn't enjoy it. It was
a mixed
like
bag.
I said, it was a very mixed bag. Yes, I would say for me, it was probably about half an hour too long. The story did go on longer than it needed to, and so it got a little, I hate to say tedious, but it did get a little bit like, okay, we're going to wrap this up, right? At a certain point.
But we have Michelle Yeoh. We have to have her kick some more things.
Okay, I will say there were some awesome fight scenes. One of them, I won't say too much because I don't know if we're doing spoilers here, but it involves a fanny pack, and it was amazing.
Yes.
That was my favorite fight scene.
I kind of like the
That was
Pomeranian
great.
too.
That was all bad.
Uh,
I grew up with Pomeranians, so for me it was hysterical.
I will say there was one line in the film that really stuck with me and helped sort of recenter me a little bit. And the line of the film was, "You're living the worst you. You're capable of anything because you're so bad at everything." And that really, to me, sort of carried on throughout what Michelle Yeoh's character Evelyn was trying to do throughout.
did we find one of the end messages that it's okay for a woman to be crazy as long as there's someone to love her and hold her together? Did we find that problematic? Because it hit me and I went, can we say that?
I don't know that it's necessarily that's the be all end all. I don't know that that's the box. That's what I will say, because
Okay.
while I see your point, that's not what I came up with in the end, and I'll explain that as I go through this. So
Your turn.
okay, so I'm the fanboy in this. In that, this is after we just wrapped up last month with Sense8 and some of the issues that Albert, Vance, and I had with the science and the science fiction. This, to me, was what science fiction does best. It promotes a lot of random thinking outside of the box, but at the same time, when it's character driven, as it is with our 3 main leads, it can be very thought provoking the longer you dwell on what's going on. So what I loved about it was that the things that I found a shortcoming with Sense8, here it seemed resolved in that this is an excellent way of demonstrating quantum mechanics and the whole quantum entanglement kind of thing. They take it and kind of used it along with multiverse kind of scenario, which is common now in science fiction. That's what a lot of people are doing. What I loved was that it was more of a female driven movie that didn't have to rely on typical tropes when you give females the lead in a movie. And I liked that they were vulnerable, they could be comedic, they could be tragic, they were well-rounded women in this movie, all of them, even Jamie Lee Curtis's bizarre tax auditor. but you know, I really liked that the women were allowed to be flawed, that they didn't have to be these perfect vehicles that hold to a certain beauty standard. They were beautiful in their own way, and they also had a dynamicism that you find lacking in a lot of sci-fi where women are involved a lot. They're often pigeonholed into certain kinds of characters. This just really blew the box on it. Now, I've not seen the Doctor Strange multiverse one, so I don't have it to compare with that. I kind of now wish I had watched it before I watched this, because I would have liked to have seen how different shows deal with, or different projects deal with multiverse kind of situation. But one of the things I really liked about this was it demonstrates just, I mean, when people talk about they want to have a religious or a spiritual experience, they don't realize the outer fringes of science. This is something that Neil deGrasse Tyson often talks about. Science is so bizarre when you really get to the fringe parts of science that it almost borders on spiritual. And this movie, to me, was a great example of that, of the absolute weirdness that is out there that we're just barely touching now. We're just barely seeking the edges of quantum mechanics and what it means and what its purpose is in our life. And I think movies like this give that kind of demonstration of the chaos. And it's funny because chaos was the big thing, but it really, the counter to it was finding inner peace. And that was what I loved most about this. And the fact that you can admit a fault and not have it sink you. And by that, I mean, the whole beginning sequences when they're in the tax audit, you see her character you see Michelle Yeoh's character of Evelyn so preoccupied with trying to stay one step ahead of every obstacle that's put in front of her. And yet in the end, without being too spoilery, when she's asked again by the tax auditor, did you hear what I said? And she says, oh, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? There was the flaw that she was able to accept, and she had the wisdom now to say, that's okay. I can ask for help. I can ask for assistance. And this is where I say, Vance, it's not so much in that box, in that I think both her and her daughter come to a conclusion that they can be flawed and still figuring it out, even with her mother being much older and still trying to figure it out, that we're all kind of figuring it out. And the world and the universe is really fucking crazy. And we try to make sense of it. We try to categorize things. We try to put them in nice, neat little boxes. And this movie, I think, did a really good job of saying, you can put it in all the boxes you want. The universe doesn't really care what you think. It's going to be what it is. And you're just going to have to deal with it. And we really are small and tiny and have very little influence on the great big picture. But we tend to blow up our own egos. And I think this is one of the other themes of this movie, this hero's journey or heroine's journey, is that you learn to embrace your insignificance as much as you do your dreams and aspirations. And that's what I really loved about this film. I get that it was diving into the deep end because I was like, whoa, okay, okay, get my bearings, put my foot up against the wall so I'm braced, But at the same time, I liked that it challenged me into going, okay, if I were Evelyn, a wonderful thing that for a man, I can say, if I were her, how would I deal with this? So Michelle Yeoh made her incredibly accessible. And I think you cared about her from the first frame. At least I did, although I'm a Michelle Yeoh fan. So, I mean, yeah. So, but I think that in this case, it was wonderful. And the chemistry between the four of them with the father figure, I liked the family dynamic. It was very believable to me. It was very real. Even in its eccentricity, it was real. And I kind of like that these alpha versions of themselves were so diametrically opposed to where they were in this living your worst life universe kind of thing. And I kind of like that disparity. And can I just say, I want to know the two guys with the butt plugs, how they were credited in the credits, because is it like I'm butt plug guy one and butt plug guy two? I was like, when I saw that sequence, I was like, oh my God, how is that going to fly in the credits? Literally, that's where I went in that moment. And then the other
on that note, we should probably give people the spoiler warnings. There is Twilight, so if epilepsy is a thing in your life, be warned. There is extreme violence, butt pluggery, and finger eating.
Yep.
And chapstick eating.
Oh, chapstick eating too.
But... yeah, which is really bizarre. So I just the other thing that I wanted to comment on is I really liked, that we have those sequences that are just you just have to buy into, and this is actually to Liz's point. You have to suspend disbelief in such a way because the catalyst is the absurd, which is what I struggle with when I watch like Doctor Who, because their version of science fiction is less science than more fiction. And I often struggle with some Doctor Who episodes because of that kind of dynamic. And so for me, I totally get Liz's point on that, and I can understand. And like I said, I braced myself when I first started watching it, but I felt rewarded in the end that by the end of it, I knew these four people. These were people I could sit down and have dinner with because I understood them.
No, they're going to eat your fingers.
No, they're not. Can I just say, playing Claire de Lune with your feet is fucking hysterical.
That was funny. All right, we should.
I lost my shit at that part. Yeah, let's get to our ratings.
Do you want to go first, fanboy?
Yeah, mine are fives across the board.
Just
I loved this movie. This is a movie I would watch again, only because Stephanie Sue and Michelle Yeoh are just my diva goddesses. I just adore these women. So yeah, I will definitely be playing this again.
All right, well, I don't have an across the board. My production quality was 5. There was no expense spared to make this film. Locations, CGI, all of it was there. Script, screenplay, that's where I give it a 4. Like I said, the actual bare bone or backbone premise was the heroine's journey yet again. We've seen it with Dorothy, we've seen it with Alice. I understand that it was modernized, and I understand that the tricks for going into fantasy were shock value on purpose. And I know there was more to getting to know the characters, but still, the backbone wasn't new to me. Sound lighting score, I'm going to bump that back up to 5. There was no moment where I felt that they were bad, and in many places I actually stopped and was like, oh, that music works for the scene, or whatever was going on.
Plus, I would have thought you liked the lighting, because when different universes had different color schemes,
they did.
And I thought, oh, Vance is going to love that.
I did, because in the chaos, that's one thing that helped the viewer figure out where the hell you were. Art direction, costuming, again, 5. The costumes were phenomenal, and again, the costumes,
absolutely,
gave away which universe you were in pretty significantly. It was actually the thing to watch to figure out, okay, am I looking at this world's version of her or that world's version of her? Casting, 5. This cast was phenomenal. I followed a couple of these characters since they were 5 years old, working with Indiana Jones. Directing 4, I do think the director went for shock value on purpose, but also confusion value on purpose. And he lost my husband, for instance. The reason I gave it a 4 is it's not easy to follow. And if you aren't 100% committed to getting to the end, you're going to go upstairs and play on your Switch, which he did. Queer themes presented a 4 also. Yes, we have a lesbian and she needs to figure out her love for herself and her partner. But that was really well. And then we had another lesbian set in Evelyn's One Reality.
With Deidre.
Yeah, but that was kind of all we touched on. So a 4, solid, represented. Personal overall rating, I gave it a 4. Liz?
All right. So for me, overall, I gave it a 3. Screenwriting, I gave a 4. It was definitely engaging, and there were some lines that were really great. Sound, lighting, and score, definitely a 5. Art direction and costume, also a 5. The costuming for me was just awesome. I loved it. And you're right, Vance, that it really helped it re-engaged you and recognize which universe they were in at each time. But especially Joy's costuming, or when she was Jobu Tubaki, those costumes were just the best.
Outstanding.
But can I just say, Jamie Lee Curtis as Deirdre, her outfit, I just loved it. I really did. And she wore pretty much the same costume the entire film. And but it.
Go government employees.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I am one. So
I used to be. I'm recovering.
yeah. I would say casting 4.5. Direction, I gave it about a 4. I think they went too far on the confusion factor. I
Kind of lost
use a
you.
term that Vance used. Yeah, it definitely lost me. Queer theme, I gave it about a 3.5. It was there, but it wasn't. There was so much more
Groundbreaking.
going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was so much more going on, and it was kind of your standard family disagreement over somebody coming out kind of a thing. Personal, like, overall score for myself, I gave it a 2. In also that, as I mentioned earlier, while there were some very engaging and entertaining parts to it, for me it was, I didn't particularly enjoy it, and it was too long. And same with Vance's husband leaving the room. My wife made it about 45 minutes and then she was out. So
Yep.
I kept getting texts, how much longer, because she wanted to come back, into the room, but she didn't want to be around the movie. So
Right.
there we are.
Oh.
There we go.
All right. Well, Liz, thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's
Our
great.
pleasure.
I love being back.
And we get to see you 3 more times this month, so I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that. Folks, go to lizfaraim.com, LIZFARAIM.com. Check out her books, see what she's up to. From there, you can springboard to her socials. Follow her. She's amazing. And
Yep.
she's going to come back and join us for a couple more movies, so look forward to that. Now, on to what's one Baz and my week. And we'll
We'll
there.
stop there.
All right. Which So, what are you on about this week?
I am on about now. I have to give a disclaimer. I'm not a Swiftie, so I'm not a Taylor Swift fan. Which I just learned that phrase. I didn't even know that was a thing. So I've learned something. I can go to sleep now. But I saw that trans model and performer Laith Ashley played Taylor Swift's love interest in one of her music videos for Lavender Haze. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was great. It was a great nod to the community. It was a way of showing support, but it also, I think it was a lovely video that actually, it part of the humanization of our community. And I think that it's a great, thing. So I'm on about that for this week. What about you?
Leslie Jones is guest hosting The Daily Show, and it's everything I need.
Wanda Sykes did it the following week. They both were.
Oh, I have to go back. I have to go back and see that then. One, The Daily Show has been pretty awesome just in general with their hosts. The fact that they just kind of have given these comedians a microphone and said, all right, here are the events going on in the world.
You do
Kind of
this
report
week,
on
yeah.
them. Kind of report on them, but do it your way. I love it. They're the best news on the air right now.
Well, I often said that, and when they do Weekend Update with Michael Che and Colin Jost, I'm like, why can't the news be like this? It could be entertaining and informative at the same time, and comedy does it best. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
So, excellent. So, who won your week?
Why am I blanking on her name? Solveig? Sandy
Toksvig.
Toksvig, that was it. Sandy Toksvig, and if you don't follow her, go follow her now.
Oh yeah, must. It's a must.
Met with the Archbishop of Canterbury to talk with him about the Church of England's stance on LGBTQ people, and the meeting did not go well. The Archbishop kind of told her, well, we want to do better, but we can't. And so she made a plea to everybody who listens to anything she ever says and said, hey, love is love. Let's love everyone. Let's show the church the way. And I thought that her saying, let's show the church the way, was brave and epic and kind of put her on a pedestal for me, higher than the pedestal I'd already had her on. That won my goddamn week.
I love my Danes. Love all the Danes out there. All right. So mine is from the book of Timothy Chalamet. And I'm on a crusade to make bands like him.
Why?
He did evidently an advertisement. Well, actually, this is a dual win for the week. It's Apple Plus TV and Timothy Chalamet. I thought when I first saw this video, and I'll fly it here, that when I first saw this, I thought, oh, they're doing a kind of like the life of Timothy Chalamet, like a day in the life, where they're following him around or doing some kind of documentary. And it's had this trailer, quote unquote, and there's reason for the quotes. It has had over 13 million views on YouTube. So obviously people would be interested in it, but it doesn't appear to be a thing. It is a trailer really for Apple Plus TV and all the great things you can find on it, but they wrap it in a, will Timothy Chalamet do a day in the life of, or this is my life, or this is how I deal with success kind of pseudo documentary kind of thing. And he plays into it like he's contemplating it, and he has conversations with friends. He watches other artists up on Apple Plus TV, and he thinks, oh, I could do that, And so there's all this, but it's deprecating in a way, because he's leaning really hard into celebrity, but you can tell by the way he's doing it, it's so tongue-in-cheek. It's absolutely fucking brilliant. And it's a great way for a streaming platform to advertise all the things it's doing, but cowered inside of this faux documentary that's not going to be made, that I can tell. I haven't been able to find any announcement about it. It just appears to be a 3-minute advertisement in a trailer form about the platform. And I just thought, it's a brilliant idea for advertising. It's called Call Me Timothy Chalamet. And that's the name of the advertisement trailer. So that won my week, because I just thought it was fucking hysterical. I like when celebrities poke fun at themselves and do that kind of thing.
Wasn't the previous one that they did, the guy with the chin from Mad Men sitting in his room watching some other celebrity look kind of like him up on Apple TV, and he was complaining how he always gets mistaken for the guy?
Oh, I think you're right.
They've done a couple of those now, where it's a celebrity kind of mocking their own celebrity.
Yeah. I just thought it was brilliant. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is really cool that you can get them. Jason Momoa makes an appearance in it, and so there's other people that are definitely on the platform. And he ends it by just saying, Apple, call me. And so it's kind of like he's saying, I could do this too, kind of thing. So it's kind of like trying to get a gig. So anyways, that's who won my week.
All right. Any final words of wisdom?
Be open. Life is meant to be lived. Don't necessarily shut yourself off. If something doesn't work for you, look for another avenue. If a door closes, open a window. That's what I got.
All right. Mine is, if you have neighbors who are having medical difficulties, go shovel their snow.
Be kind. Doesn't really cost much.
It didn't cost me nothing. Just a little bit of time.
Yep.
And a bad back. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding. All right, folks.
No, he's not.
Go follow Melanie Mitzner. Follow Liz Faraim. Our guests this week are phenomenal. Support them. Read their books. Follow them on social media. Say hi.
Talk to the ladies.
Yes. We at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to these queer content creators, so support us as well if you can. Give us some likes, some hugs, a little Patreon
Comments.
support doesn't hurt. Buy some merchandise. Thank you for following us. All right, Written on the Edge is produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. Subscribe, get the alerts, tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye-bye now.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in Melody, dear.